Hey everyone, Sean Pierce Johnson here. It wasn't too long ago that we had the great pleasure of being able to check out 3 different mini amp heads from the mighty Peavey. Now I have to be honest with you, I really wasn't sure what to expect when I got these 3 amplifiers to begin with. I wasn't sure which of them I was going to bond with more. I had an idea, of course, just based on the aesthetics and based off my previous knowledge of these circuits. But ultimately, the amp that really, truly won my heart was the Invective MH. And I'm kind of surprised by that. And today I'm going to tell you all about what led to me figuring that this was the amplifier for me and how I've been able to incorporate it into my workflow. Before we get into the bulk of this video, I would just like to ask if you would kindly click that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. And if at any point during this video you're enjoying it, throw it a thumbs up. Now, if you haven't gotten a chance to do so already, and you want to hear all 3 of these mini amp heads, I have a link to that 3 amp roundup video in the description box down below, and you can also click the card in the top right corner of the screen. I want to recap some of the features of the Invective MH. The Invective MH is a 20-watt EL84 powered 2-channel guitar amplifier with a clean channel and a dirty channel. The clean channel is controlled by 3 knobs: gain, bass, and treble. You can basically think of gain as volume. Moving over to the dirty channel, we have controls for pre-gain, bass, middle, treble, and post-gain. Pre-gain and post-gain are kind of a thing that Peavey's done for a very long time. Pre-gain you can essentially think of as gain on other distortion channels, and post-gain as your volume for that channel. That's followed up with 2 controls for the power amp section of the amplifier labeled resonance and presence. In my opinion, the hallmark feature of the Invective series as a whole is the fact that the dirty channel has so much flexibility that you can add onto it. Now on the Invective MH, there are 3 different buttons that you can basically be adding stuff on to the dirty channel. You have a built-in noise gate, you have a boost which comes before the dirty channel, and you can kind of think of that at like running an 808 tube screamer into the front end. And there's a tight switch. So say you're using something like a 7-string or an 8-string, something with a really low tuning and lower pitches, that low end roll-off will really help, well, tighten up the distortion sound, and your riffs, your chugs, all those low tunings will come through nice and punchy and clear. Now, some of my favorite features on the Invective MH are accessed on the back panel of the amplifier, specifically the effects loop and the 2 foot switch jacks. You have access to 4 different functions on the Invective MH to work into any kind of switcher-based rig that you might have. The top jack allows you to turn on and off the tight switch and switch between the 2 channels. And then the bottom jack either bypasses the effects loop or turns on and off both the boost and the noise gate at the same time. There are a few other features that make this really handy for both home, studio, and live gigging use. There's a single speaker output, and that can be switched between 16 and 8 ohms. But right next to that speaker output is a 3-position switch, which allows you to run the Invective MH at its full 20 watts, knock that down to 5 watts, or take it all the way down to 1 watt. Next to that is Peavey's proprietary MSDI output. That stands for Microphone Simulated Direct Interface. You also have a ground lift switch next to that DI output because you might encounter some unwanted noise, hiss, and hum. There's one last feature on this amplifier that a lot of you out there might think is really cool, but I don't use personally, and that's the USB output on the back. You can essentially use the Invective MH as your recording interface going into your DAW. With everything that I've just said, it really makes the case for the Invective MH being possibly the most fully featured mini amp head I've ever run across. Maybe you've run across something else that has more features, but I feel like everything really well thought out here. So let's get down to hearing it. I'm going to use some of those same sound samples that we heard in the comparison to sort of remind you of some of the core sounds that this amp is capable of getting. Now, if you saw the comparison video with the 6505 MH and the Classic 20, you'll recognize some of those basic sound clips, and it does a pretty good job of showing you what the Invective is capable of. But now I want to give you an idea of what it is about the Invective MH that I really feel makes it the amp of the bunch for me, that fits best with my style of playing, my genre of music that I typically work in, and also how it's pretty much the best one for the modern-minded guitarist. Now, in order to do this, I put together a pedal board with my Gig Rig G2, and with that board and the Invective MH together, I have a pretty powerful guitar rig. The first thing I want to show you is how I can utilize the remote switches in G2 with the foot switch jacks on the back of the Invective MH to get a clean sound, a crunchy sound, a more classic kind of high gain sound, and then one that's much more modern guitar focused. First, let's check out the clean channel. Now, all I'm doing in front of the amp is running an orange compressor, a compressor to just help even things out. But I'm utilizing the effects loop switch to engage two pedals in the effects loop. The Mako R1 from Walrus Audio with a little bit of hall reverb, and the Keeley Halo, which it just has a dotted eighth note pulse, just to provide some ambiance and some nice atmospherics. Now a crunch sound. Now all I've done with this is I've engaged the dirty channel. The effects loop is still going to be on with the Mako R1 reverb, but I engaged the tight switch. What this does is it engages a low end roll off in front of, I believe, the dirty channel. And what I end up noticing is that that roll off of low end frequencies helps clean up some of the gain structure. Now, staying on the dirty channel, this sound has the boost and gate engaged, as well as the effects loop and the channel switch. Again, all being done on the Gig Rig G2, handling all that switching of what's on the Invective. we go one step further. Now, I don't play 6-string guitar in my band all the time. Sometimes I play 7-string. And to be able to have a dirty sound that works for 6 and 7-string instruments is pretty much something I have to always be focused on. And thankfully, just by adding the tight switch onto that dirty sound that I just played, I can plug in my Ormsby, I can tune it down to standard 7-string or drop A, and I have a 7-string distorted sound that works just as well as it does for the 6-string instrument, just by engaging the tight switch. So let me go ahead and play you that dirty sound once more. And now I'll play the same sound, but now this one has the tight switch engaged. You can hear that sound is just a little bit cleaner, but when we plug in the Ormsby, that extra cleanliness in the low end is really going to help the low tuning come through. So let's hear the dirty sound without the tight switch and then with the tight switch using the 7-string. Now, I personally think that cleaning up is very beneficial, but you might want to add just a little bit of extra gain either onto the amp just using the pre-gain knob, or you can even just throw a pedal in front of it if you feel so inclined. So we've seen how successfully we can use the Invective's just 2 channels to get basically 4 different sounds. Something good for clean, something nice and crunchy, a high gain rhythm sound for 6-string and 7-string. But I think now the best thing to do is to kind of play around with it a little bit, see if we can maybe coax some different kind of sounds out of it rather than just thinking of this as a modern metal amplifier. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Whatever pedals I use, I'll throw up on the screen so you know the signal chain. And there you have it, my friends. That is the Peavey Invective MH 20-watt mini guitar amp head. I'm quite surprised that this is the one that I seem to bond with the most, but at the same time, I shouldn't really be that surprised. I love being able to have access to all the push buttons on the front of the amplifier, on the foot switches. And the fact that they're TRS jacks makes it so much easier for me to implement with my Gig Rig G2. I consider myself a bit of a MIDI idiot, a midiot, if you will. So I'm not really all that keen on MIDI controlled amplifiers. It's just far too much for me to wrap my head around. The fact that this is a simple TRS cable, which I can just solder myself down in the garage and make as long or short as I want them to be, I am all about that. And I also have to say, I've plugged this amp into my Orange PPC 212, which has Celestion Vintage 30s, and you heard it today through the Peavey 212-6 with greenbacks in it. And I loved both of them. But I think maybe the greenbacks were my favorite amongst the two. But the fact that I was able to plug it into both speaker cabs, the main speaker cab that I know and love the sound of, and this new one, which was a little bit less familiar, I'm pretty excited about that. But now I want to hear from all of you. What did you think of the Invective MH? What was your favorite sound we dialed up? Or is there a particular use that I was able to show off that you think would suit your needs best? Whatever your thoughts are, please share them in the comments section down below, and I'll do my best to get back to each and every one of you. If you enjoyed this video in any way, I would greatly appreciate your support in helping me make guitar videos just like this for all types of players. The simplest thing you can do is clicking the subscribe button and ringing the notification bell. It also doesn't hurt to give the video a thumbs up and share a link to it with a friend of yours. But what I'd really love you to do is go one step above and beyond and become a member of my email club. Links to videos just like this are sent direct to your inbox without the YouTube algorithm screwing things up. Not to mention, you're also clued in on some news, blog posts that I write, and future giveaways that are only available to members of the email club. Just go to SeanPierceJohnson.com/email, enter your name and email address, and it'll take me a couple days to get you into the system, but once you're in, you're in. You can also just click the link in the description box down below or the card in the top right-hand corner of your screen. In closing, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for watching this video and to Peavey for giving me the opportunity to showcase these amplifiers to you all. I have had an absolute blast with it. Until we see each other next, I am Sean Pierce Johnson wishing you all watching great tone, great health, and of course, happy stomping. Cheers, friends. God bless.